Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And let's start off with a little bit of the entertainment uh, venue, and that's the Super Bowl. Very interesting. Of course, it's part of woke corporatism at this point. That you have, I think it started with Billie Jean King about inclusion, and then we had the halftime show where Eminem took a knee, probably worth what $300 million or something. And then you had the liberal hypocrisy of none of them, or not none of them, most of them not wearing masks. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I actually didn't watch the Super Bowl this year. Uh, haven't really watched the NFL for quite a while. I started losing interest in it when I switched to streaming services and cut the cord and actually was not able to watch the Super Bowl
Okay.
and found I didn't miss it.
Can I
So,
interject one thing really quick? Because I think the NFL does well in spite of itself. Uh, I've seen reruns of older, like Monday Night Football, 30, 40 years ago, what have you. It was all this political correctness, wokeism, and just the corporatization of the NFL has actually soured it. They're living off past times. So I will concur, Dr. Lobkin.
yeah, I mean, they really are. I mean, it did rebound. The Super Bowl ratings this year were actually very good. I think that has more to do with the fact that so much had been canceled over the last 2 years that people are just dying to get back to normal, and watching the Super Bowl is part of that normal.
Yeah, in
But
fact,
I
like
mean,
the dog show in Philadelphia got huge ratings. Yeah, I mean anything is people coming back to anything is a positive. Yes.
but I think it did make a big difference seeing all of these people not wearing masks. And I don't know how many people know this or not, but N95 masks were actually left on everybody's seat.
Did
So
not know that.
so everybody had a mask that they were capable of putting on, and virtually nobody did. And of course, the celebrities didn't wear masks. You saw, the attendees not wearing masks. And I think that just fueled the fire for all of the governors who are pulling back mandates.
I would agree. And what does it do to? We were going to talk about this a little further on down about Justin Trudeau's essentially launching a fascist state in Canada due to the mask or the vaccine protests. Your thoughts?
Trudeau has lost all credibility. He barely squeaked in the last time he was up for election. I don't see him getting in at all the next time. But not only is Canada responding to this, but you're starting to see these trucker convoys across the world. Basically, had Trudeau just gone, all right, let's talk, we'll deal with this, disperse, and we'll have discussions, nothing would have happened. Because he took a hard line, now you're seeing similar things pop up everywhere. He actually accelerated his opposition on a global scale.
A
And
100%, but it really goes into the fact he was never qualified. I think we've talked about this before. I mean, the guy, his father was a horrible prime minister, by the way. He was a party boy. I think his biggest claim to fame, he was a boxer. And as soon as he had any pressure, he's never had business experience. He never did exactly what you just articulated in terms of, sitting down, talking to people. And he's such a wussy. He freaks out and leaves Ottawa. I mean, imagine him in like World War II. He's not exactly Winston Churchill.
no, the mayor of Toronto actually made some comments about him the other day. And he said that basically he has done what he always does. If people disagree with him, he doubles down and calls them racists. And then the mayor went on to say, ironically, I spoke to a lot of citizens, and the only person they could ever name that actually went around in blackface was Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, it's Interesting, 100% agreement that he's creating a whole movement, putting further fuel on the whole controversy that's been, or the whole political mandate on mandates and masks. It's the end of his political career. Couldn't happen soon enough. The only reason he got in last time is because they called an election during COVID. But he's just been, like cockroaches. When the light comes on, they scuttle away. The light's been on him. He's been in a situation that took some finesse, some strategic thinking, and he failed on all accounts.
Absolutely. There was also some speculation. Biden called Trudeau and said, you have to do something about this. And I don't know if Biden pushed him to do more of this, or it's because Biden just wanted this over that he doubled down. Because remember, the first thing that Biden did when he got into office was kill the Keystone Pipeline, which has put our relationship with Canada on, precarious ground because they were relying on that pipeline. So Biden reaching out to Trudeau now, Trudeau's like, well, you screwed me. I'm going to screw you.
Yeah, there's no love lost there. The whole Keystone Pipeline was a travesty. You would have given us a lot more leverage with the whole Russia Ukraine situation. It was Biden being asleep at the switch. They put a stack of reversals in front of him, reversing Trump's initiatives, and he probably didn't even know what the heck he was signing because no sane person would get rid. It was 2/3 of the way built. Explain that one, genius. Um, so I think the biggest thing in the news, Dr. Lopkin, is the Durham report. And I think it has huge implications. Hillary Clinton is a CNN poll, believe it or not, that a half of Democrats want Hillary investigated. But it also goes to the whole fact of the media. Um, Tulsi Gabbard, who's a Democrat, basically came out and said that the media work to undermine our democracy. I 100% agree with her, and they're doing nothing. I'm talking your corporate media, your mainstream, except for Fox, Newsmax, and maybe One American's News, and possibly, obviously, some streaming sources. There are crickets going on. Nothing. They couldn't get enough of Trump. It's not even about Trump, though. It's about this equate. I think this is a bigger crime and has larger repercussions internationally, a la Russia, domestic than water. It makes Watergate look like a college frat party.
Yeah, this is a major story. The broadcast networks have given it a grand total of 0 minutes of coverage. CNN has so far given it about 2.5 minutes
Yeah, I
of
thought it was two and a half.
coverage.
Yep.
You know, um, they don't want to, get into this because Washington Post, New York Times, they won Pulitzer Prizes for their coverage of the Russia collusion controversy. And now, in all realism, they should be giving those awards back because they were completely fooled.
Well, I
Tulsi
don't think they
Gabbard.
were fooled. I actually disagree. I think they were willing conspirators. I think seeing anyone who actually dug a little deeper into this, they knew it was a bunch of bullshit. Okay, the whole thing
Well,
made
that
no sense. It was
actually
bullshit.
that's the key though. And that's the difference. As you said, anybody who dug a little deeper, none of them dug. They didn't want to dig. So they weren't so much co-conspirators as they just let it happen. They didn't look into it at all.
Because it fit their agenda and their
Yes.
overwhelming compulsion to unseat Trump. They couldn't. They were repulsed by him because he was everything they weren't. A
And you know what?
nationalist for one.
And actually, I'm going to go a little further. I don't think it was just about Trump. Because if you remember during the campaign, Hillary went after Tulsi Gabbard for being a Russian operative. This was how she was dealing with whoever was against her. And she pulled so many dirty tricks that when Trump beat her, she had to try to cover her tracks, which is why they continued doing this into his presidency. It was her way of going, oh, well, let's get rid of him so nobody knows the dirty tricks that we did.
Well, let me ask you a question. Is she on the on the ground on this one in terms of is her political career over? I mean, was a lot of talk about her being resurrected. I think this severely diminishes any because she's going to have to answer to this. She might even be
I,
indicted.
I think it depends on how far Durham pushes and what he uncovers. Obviously, the media is giving her a pass, so there's a huge segment of the population that doesn't even know this is going on. Legally, let's face it, the buck stops with her. It was her campaign. It was her, they were paying the bills. There's no way that the lawyers did this without her say so.
Of
So
course.
we know she is behind this. She's the one that called the shots. As far as I'm concerned, she should certainly be indicted. But
Can
we'll
Durham
see.
indict her?
I think he can.
And then it's
From
game over.
from
You,
what
I
we've
mean, they have to cover
heard,
that.
yeah, from what we've heard so far, there are more people cooperating with the Durham investigation every day. He is gaining momentum. And there is a good possibility that a whole lot more indictments are going to hit in the coming few months. And of course, the closer we get to November, the more those indictments are going to hurt the Democrats.
And that's what I have to disagree with you a little bit on. The media has no interest in covering this. I agree with you 100% on that. But it's going to get to a point with critical mass if there's some large scale, big trophy indictments. The mainstream media is going to have to cover it. You can't
Oh,
not
yeah.
cover it.
If
It's impossible.
if they indict Hillary, yes, that's going to get coverage. If they indict um
Jake Sullivan.
Jake Sullivan, yes, that's who I was trying to think of. If they indict him, the media is going to have to cover it. If the indictments are behind the scenes people that nobody's ever heard of,
Agreed.
they'll poo-poo it and oh, it's not news. It's
It doesn't speak volumes of Jake Sullivan, who's a high up in making strategic decisions. Obviously, a bold-faced liar and has no scruples. So, do you trust him on other things? No.
no. I mean, this puts his credibility into question on every decision.
No question. Well, speaking of being unhinged, because I believe Hillary is unhinged, she never got over 2016. AOC, um, she's someone, she was a bartender, okay? And then she was discovered by someone who actually had a brain. His name I do not recall, an Indian tech guy. And she was the rock star. She was it. She was Elvis, Mick Jagger, and Paul McCartney wrapped into one. She was on every show. Now she's becoming a little more than a little unhinged. She basically is now thinking, first of all, when she said the Republicans just want to date her, okay, yes, I understand. There's no ego there. And then she was saying that Congress is just a big shit show, and she's essentially above it. So you can laugh that off. Then she was campaigning for one of her socialist congressional candidates in Texas and made the case that the Israelis are putting Palestinian children in cages, which has been rebuked around the world, even by Nancy Pelosi, believe it or not.
Yeah, AOC.
She's becoming unhinged.
Well, she also, in an interview with the New Yorker, she made a number of comments. One of which is that we are in danger of losing our democracy in 10 years unless, of course, they can pass their voter reform act So essentially, what she's saying is that we're going to lose democracy unless we turn over our rights to the far left. She
Oh no, it's
is,
even worse than that because BU probably doesn't do a really great job because she has a degree in economics or math. Because she says yes, we'll lose our democracy in 10, but does it really make a difference, Dr. Lopkin, when she says global warming is going to kill us in 6? Who the hell
yeah,
cares? I mean,
right.
we'll already be dead. So who
She
cares?
she has gone over the edge with these doomsday predictions. And I think the reason is that when she got into this, she didn't know how Congress worked. She still, based on the statements she said recently, doesn't understand how the presidency and executive orders work. She had no idea what she was really getting into. And because of this, she has been ranked as the least effective lawmaker. In her time in Congress, she has gotten no laws out of committee. Everything she has pushed for has failed. And now she's lashing out. She's basically a child throwing a temper
Exactly, no
tantrum
question. Yes,
because
she's
she has not gotten her way. And over the past year, you've seen across the country voters rebuke every policy she's been pushing.
she was the worst thing, the best thing to happen to or one of the best things to happen to conservatism, and the her and the squad has essentially caused fractures, divisions, and ill-gotten policies. It's destroyed the Democratic Party at least for the midterms. Her and her
It
crew,
it has destroyed
the
them for the
genius crew.
midterms. They are pushing back finally. Pelosi, in an interview last weekend, publicly said, the Democrats are not supporting defund the police, except for a few members that they've talked to. The moderates, Manchin, Cinema, couple of folks in Congress have finally started publicly pushing back against the left. The Democratic governors across the country have started pushing back against the far left. So the Democratic Party has finally realized if we want to survive, we need to move back towards the center and back towards helping the working class. Now
No question.
they're not going to do it in time for the midterms.
No, they're
But
not. But I also think I want your opinion on this. I'm sure our listeners as well. Yes, it's about that, about political survival. But it's also when the squad first came on the scene, they were scared shitless of them. I think they see their power diminishing, and I think when power diminishes, there's a vacuum, and now it's open season. I think it's going to get worse. I think they might actually be more marginalized than they are right now, or at least the plan.
oh, they're definitely going to be marginalized. Almost every member of the squad, last time I checked, is facing a primary challenger. So they're not just fighting against the Republicans, they're fighting against their fellow Democrats. And they're trying to push more liberal candidates in districts where moderate Democrats can barely hold on. So if a progressive wins the primary, they're almost guaranteed to lose in the general election. They have really damaged the Democratic Party. And I think there were two two events that finally put the nail in the squad's coffin and started the Democratic Party on the track to rebuilding as a genuine party that represents the American people. The first was the vote to fund the missile dome for Israel, where basically
The
every
Iron Dome.
Congress,
Yep.
yeah, every Congressperson voted for this except the squad, and even AOC didn't have the guts to vote against it. She just didn't vote.
She did cry.
She did cry about it. Yes, I think that was the first, and then the second event was Manchin and Sinema putting the nail in the coffin for Build Back Better. That basically told the liberal left that they're done. They're not getting their agenda passed. Nobody wants their agenda. America has been turning against it. And then also, we had the 2021 elections where you saw in Virginia, they got rid of the Democrats. Progressive candidates lost across the country
And
and
almost lost in New Jersey,
almost
a
lost in New
solid
Jersey.
blue state.
And just in the last few days, you had far left progressive school board members lose a recall election in San Francisco.
Yes, amazing.
If
yes.
if the progressives can't win in San Francisco, they are done.
Agree. Well, speaking of done, this could be well done. Like I like my hamburgers. You look at it. We all agree. Everyone agrees, except for Nancy Pelosi, that the Democrats are going to lose the House. I was always under the impression it was going to be really tight for the Senate, but a recent poll came out addressing both the Senate and the gubernatorial races. And in the Senate, if I was a Democrat or a Democratic operative, I would be scared shitless because right now, for the seats that are up for election, you have 9 solid in the Democratic camp, and one of them is Connecticut with Blumenthal. What can I tell you? And one leaning towards Democrat is that's in Colorado. You have 5 toss-ups, 4 leaning, and one of those who are supposedly leaning is Rubio, but he's up by 7 points. 1 likely Republican, 14 solid Republican. So you have like 20 some odd, or basically you have about 20 that are, or 19 that are solidly or at least leaning Republican, and the 5 toss-ups, if the Republicans get half, it's a shellacking. It's like brutal.
Yeah, remember,
And then in the gubernatorial races, it's even worse.
yeah,
Thank you,
remember
the squad. Thank you to
yeah,
the squad.
the key in the Senate that people have to remember is even with all those numbers, the Republicans only have to flip 1 seat. It's a 50-50 split right now. If the Democrats lose anything, they lose the Senate. So the Democrat, and I mean, it works the other way as well. The Democrats have to flip 1 seat as well. But the Democrats are going against the headwinds of Joe Biden because he's dragging the entire ticket down. They're going against the headwinds of the squad and the progressive left, who are actually actively gunning for moderate Democrats. So, where the Republicans are basically just trying to take seats away from the Democrats, you've got the Democrats trying to defend themselves against fellow Democrats and then try to take seats from the Republicans.
No, I think I mean, if you look at it, the Republicans absolutely flip Congress, and if they flip, let's say, 5 seats in this, that is a shot heard round the world. Then Biden is beyond a lame duck. It's whatever. I can't even tell you with the term.
I've actually seen some predictions. Now, this is not my prediction. I don't know if this is even possible, but there have been polling numbers that have the Republicans flipping 10 senatorial seats.
Yeah.
Now, if that happens, the Republicans take control of the House and have a veto-proof majority in the Senate, which means, yes, for 2 years, Biden is an absolute lame duck because the Republicans can put any law they want up, and even if Biden vetoes it, they can override him. That's actually how dire it is for the Democrats.
And I don't see it getting any better with gas prices approaching $100 a barrel, not looking good. And to your point, Dr. Lopkin, in a generic poll of people's attitudes. The GOP now has a 12-point advantage when they had about a 12-point disadvantage less than a year ago. That's a 24, if you can do the math, AOC. That's a 24 points swing. Not good. Speaking of not good, the Biden administration, in terms of geopolitically, has no idea what the hell they're doing. They're emboldening our enemies like Iran. They denied giving tankers, that is, flying transport tankers, to Israel. Um, what kind of a signal does that send? It takes a card off the table. They're so friggin' stupid that they don't get it. Giving a couple tankers to Israel gives Israel at least the implied capability of taking out Iran's nuclear capabilities, but no, they can't do that. So all those people who were talking about, oh, how bad Trump is and how he's a racist and whatever, well, Israel is a lot better off with him versus numbnuts.
Well, remember, it goes back to Robert Gates' statement that for 50 years, Joe Biden has been on the wrong side of every foreign policy decision. And that's continuing. And I love that every time he makes a speech, the White House press corps, Jen Psaki, all start making the rounds because they've got to clarify what he says. The latest one is he talked about the fact that if Russia invades Ukraine, it's going to cause energy prices to go up. And Jen Psaki comes out and says, well, he didn't mean to imply that we're making foreign policy decisions based on energy prices. And it's like, no, if you listen to the speech, it's very clear that that's not what he's saying. What he's saying is he's making excuses for why energy prices are going to skyrocket and trying to deflect the blame from his administration.
It's it's very interesting, and I think I want to close on your opinion on this. I think it's fascinating, not fascinating, interesting, perplexing that their prescription for success or to reboot was going to get Camilla and Little Joe on the road again. And I think they've kind of kiboshed that because the more he speaks, the more obviously mainstream media, they have to cover it, and more people see total incompetency and senility.
Well, yeah, it's not just the incompetence. Every time he speaks, more and more people start saying, "Okay, you know what? He needs a cognitive test."
Yes.
Because he's lashing out at the reporters. And let's face it, the only reason he got into office was because he stayed in a bunker during most of the campaign and the press gave him a pass on everything.
No, they
Well,
didn't. They asked him what's his
yeah,
favorite ice cream.
yeah.
No, they did, and he took a while, and then he said Rocky Road or whatever it was. Yes, that was their
So
toughest question.
yes, and now he's lashing out at them, and they're starting to strike back because they're tired of him not taking their questions, and when he does, calling them names and being in general who Joe Biden always was. Yeah, he was never friendly Uncle Joe. This is who Joe Biden really is.
No doubt. It was a complete bullshit about what Amtrak Joe and Lunch Pail. No, he's always been a political operative and not the nicest guy. But I do think it's beyond that. He's just calling them names and they're offended. I think they do the dirty work of the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party desperately needs him not to run. Not that he's even capable of that, but he needs to go away, and they're helping
Well,
in that effort.
I think John Kennedy, and I'm referring to the Republican senator, not
Yes.
JFK. John Kennedy said it best the other day when he described this because, Joe Biden said to Lester Holt, yeah, you're being a bit of a wise ass with me. And John Kennedy said, before you can be a smart ass, you have to be smart. Otherwise, you're just an ass. And that's what Biden has been doing. He's just an ass.
Absolutely. Well, great show, and for people out there, we can be accessed and basically everywhere. Well, great podcasts are available. Correct?
Absolutely. You can find us Every episode at xvadio.com/podcasts, as well as the Carnivore Radio website. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and wherever you find podcasts.
And can't they also have input into our shows in terms of what they want us to talk about?
If you want us to look into something specific, have feedback on the show, or just want to comment on what we're doing on this or any other show on the Xvadio Podcast Network, you can go to xvadio.com/connect. Let us know what you're thinking.
Thank you, Dr. Lockman. Thank our listeners.
We'll see you next week.